Sabrina here from Scrappy Tails Crafts, and today I wanted to play around with the Popping Poppies stamp set by Scrappy Tails. I did create 3 cards. I just cannot create single card videos anymore. I love to try to stretch my creativity and try to use a stamp set more than just on one card design. But whenever I know I'm going to create multiple cards in a video, I do want them all to correlate and kind of look nice together in a thumbnail. So all of these cards incorporate black and white paper, but I didn't have any black and white striped pattern paper in my stash, so I made my own just using some strips of cardstock. So you'll see that in the tutorial. So if you ever really wanted a black and white striped paper, you can easily create it yourself. So here are 2 of the card designs that we will be creating today. The third one is kind of hiding behind me because it's my favorite. I know you can see it in the thumbnail, but whatever. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. Otherwise, everything that I used will be listed down below. So yeah, all right guys, I will see you on the other side of the camera with the microphone. Bye. So as I mentioned, the stamp set that I'm going to be using today is called Popping Poppies by Scrappy Tails. My grandma illustrated this one. If you're new to Scrappy Tails, we are a family business, so my mom, myself, and my grandma illustrate and design all of the stamps and dies that we sell. I'm also going to be using those lacy slimline borders for my first card, but I want to do all my prep work ahead of time. If you have been watching my channel for a while, you might know that I like to do my coloring and die cutting and stamping ahead of time. So I stamped way more than I needed, but I do decorate little handmade tags for every order that we get. So I thought that having a few extras would not be the end of the world here. So what I did was I stamped all of the poppies on some bright red cardstock. This is almost like orange, because if you look at poppies, they're sort of like a reddish orange color. I stamped them with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, poured some clear embossing powder over them, and now I'm just heat setting everything. For the leaves, I stamped them all onto some bright green cardstock. I'm just going to heat set those as well. And I do want to add some shading to these, so I'm going to add some crushed olive to the leaves and candied apple distress ink to the poppies. And the way I'm going to apply the ink is with these ink daubers. I just bought this case, so these are my first colors I'm using. And all I do is I ink up the sponge, and then I just add the color towards the base of the leaf, and then I let it fade out into the color of the paper. You can stamp everything out in white and completely color them in with your inks if you don't have any colored cardstock. But colored cardstock is very inexpensive, and it's nice to have on hand for paper piecing and die cutting. So here I'm going to go over the poppies with the candied apple. And so this saved me a ton of time. I definitely could have colored all of these in, but my copics are very dry at this point. I have not, I think last year at this time I mentioned that I needed copic refills, and I still have not bought them. As you know, copics are quite pricey, so if I can try to use some of my other coloring mediums, that works for me. But yeah, I'm also going to be adding some vintage photo right to the centers of these flowers to add even more shading. And since I had so many leaves and poppies, I decided to just use my scan and cut to die cut everything out. That only took a couple of minutes. And over to the right, I have my pile of flowers and leaves. So now we're going to start with card 1. I'm taking my slimline lacy borders. I cut one of the decorative slimline borders from white cardstock and then the shadow layer from gold mirror cardstock. And then I'll set those aside and work on the heart from that Popping Poppies stamp set. 2 of my 3 cards feature that heart. And as I mentioned, I did not have any black and white striped pattern paper, so I decided to create my own. I have some black strips of cardstock that I cut down to, I believe these are 5 inches by 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm just gluing them onto some scrap white cardstock that is also 5 inches wide and trying my best to evenly space them apart. So this is definitely a great way to use up your scraps, and if you have a certain striped background that you really want but you don't have pattern paper for, you can create it very easily yourself. So I'm just going to add a few more strips to this panel, and then I'm going to move this into my MISTI because I plan on stamping the heart right on top. Now, because I layered the black strips onto flat white cardstock, the black strips are raised a teeny bit higher. So you're going to want to make sure that you ink up the heart well. I probably should have stamped it out twice. To me, the stamping ended up looking okay for my standards at least, but I will say that the sentiment was a little bit bumpy just because of those raised strips of cardstock. So for this technique, I would probably recommend using pattern paper if you have it, but if you don't, this still, I feel, looks good. And for my other two cards, the black and white stripes are going to be my background elements, so it didn't really matter if those were raised or not. This is the only card where a smooth paper probably would have worked best. But as crafters, sometimes we have to get creative when we have a certain envision in your mind of how you want a card to look. And overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out. So I did sprinkle gold embossing powder over the entire heart, as well as the sentiment. I chose "You Popped in My Mind," and I'm taking my die cut flowers, and because I used my scan and cut on these images, it did cut around all of the black lines, so I did have to use my scissors on some of the leaves and florals, specifically the flowers that were attached to this heart. I did have to trim off that extra stamping with my scissors, but that was not too difficult overall. I think I saved a lot of time not having to die cut all of those flowers and leaves. So I did decide to pop up the florals on this heart. I glued the leaves down flat. And to pop up my poppies and make them pop, no pun intended, I am gluing 3 pieces of 110-pound white Neenah cardstock. These are just little scraps that I cut down into small pieces specifically for this reason. I am saving foam tape. I know some people think that this might cost more than foam tape, but I don't think it does, just because I'm using really tiny pieces that I would have otherwise thrown away. But yeah, so I popped up the poppies. I am now going to add my lacy slimline border. Now this is a panel cut to 5 by 5 inches, so I did not need the entire border. So I'm going to trim off the excess. But these are borders that are really great, obviously, for slimline cards. And this just added a nice sort of elegance to the card, and it tied in that gold from the embossing. So I did add my heart to the top left corner, and then I kind of felt like the bottom right was missing something, so I did decide to add another poppy down there and another leaf. I popped up the poppy. How many times am I going to say pop today? I should have like a counter on my video. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this panel onto my 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch card base, and to finish it off, I'm just going to add some Trinity Stamp gold sequins, and then that is going to complete my first card. I really do like how this card turned out. There's something very elegant about square cards. And I think the red against the black and white really pops. Sometimes when I'm creating red flowers with green leaves, I always think it's too Christmassy. So that's why whenever I use red and green together, I like to add black. So for my second card, I'm creating a shaker. So I did gold heat emboss the heart from Popping Poppies on white cardstock, and I'm going in with my scissors to cut the inside portion of the heart, leaving a white border that kind of matches the white border on the outside of the heart. There are coordinating dies with this die set, but it does not cut the inside heart. So if you want to create a shaker, you can easily just go in with your scissors and cut the inside out. And then I am going to also cut my sentiment. I chose You Make Life Pop, and I'm just fussy cutting the pop, and I created a rectangle for You Make Life. Now, I didn't end up liking the gold because the sequins I chose are quite, well, sequins are sparkly. So I kind of just felt like it was too much with the gold. So you're going to see I'm going to change the sentiment and restamp it with black VersaFine. So I'm going to add acetate behind this heart, and this will be my shaker window. And then I'll take my Scotch 3M foam tape and layer it up twice. I probably did not have to do this just because I did fill my shaker with a lot of sequins. It didn't end up shaking very much, so I could have just left it probably with one layer. I do have Scotch specifically for my thin shaker windows. I do have double mounted U-line foam tape, which I really love for shakers, but I only use it on thick window frames just because it is so sticky that you will ruin your scissors if you try to cut into it. So I am now creating my striped background again, and here I just cut all of my strips into 1/4 inch strips, and I think this panel here is the size of a card base, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So my strips are 4 1/4 by 1/4 inch. Again, same thing, just gluing these down, trying to space them evenly apart. And instead of going down the entire panel, I just kind of created a strip across the center. And here are my sequins. I took red, black, and white. These are just different sequins from my stash. And here I tried to glue the heart on top of the sequins, but I kept like sticking my foam tape to the sequins and it wasn't all going right in the center like I wanted it to. So I decided to dump my sequins inside the heart, and then I glued the panel on top of the heart instead. So I did that off camera just to make sure that everything kind of aligned the way I wanted it to. And here I'm just going to take my flowers and add them right on top of those white ones. And then here you can see I added the You Make Life Pop, but I just felt like if it was stamped with black, it would actually pop. Sorry guys, I can't stop. So once again, I glued the leaves flat, and then I popped up my poppies using the 3 layers of 110-pound white Neenah. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue down my black sentiment right on top of the heart. If you wanted to show the sequins more, you can add your sentiment to the bottom. I thought about doing that, but I did not mind covering the sequins. So I'll just go ahead and glue that directly to the acetate with my art glitter glue. And then to embellish this card, I'm going to use the same red, white, and black sequins to decorate the outside of the card. Whenever I create a shaker, I do like to pull the shaker elements onto the outside of the card just to tie everything in. I'm using my art glitter glue to attach these, but these are the sequins that have holes in the center. So some of them were popping off and I had to re-glue them. But once they were finally adhered, I did attach some ATG tape behind my card, or actually I guess onto the card base, and then I just adhered the panel right on top, and then that will complete my second card. Really like this one, and you can see it does shake a bit, but it's quite full, so yeah, that's going to complete card number 2. Card 3, I had to create a slimline, so I did die cut a black and white slimline rectangle, and then I cut the black one into the 1/4 inch strips, so that way there was stitching all the way around. Now the very bottom strip was cut completely wonky, and that was my fault. Maybe the trimmer's fault, just saying. So the bottom black strip actually does not have any stitching, and I thought it wouldn't bother me, but it kind of does. But I know no one's gonna really notice it unless they're a card maker, perhaps. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna let it go, as Desiree from Include a Thank You likes to say a lot. So to create, or I guess to decorate this panel, I am going to once again glue my leaves flat. One of my poppies I glued flat, and then these double poppies I will pop up. And then I kind of created a similar arrangement over to the top left. I will once again glue the leaves down flat and then a few of the poppies flat. I think on that one I just pop up the center flower. I think this would be very pretty if you created sort of like a wreath around the whole card as opposed to the two corners that I'm doing here. I definitely could have probably made a card like that. I had enough flowers and leaves left. And because I colored everything in very simply with my inks as opposed to coloring them in, each card only took about 30 to 45 minutes. So pretty quick. And I definitely could have made a whole bunch more. You can mass produce these. All right, so for the center of this panel, I wanted to add Happy Birthday. This word die comes in the Scrappy Tails Slimline Shadow Box die. And I die cut the words twice from 110-pound white cardstock and once from gold mirror. So I just layered them all together to create a dimensional sentiment. I thought about using the shadow layer that comes in the die set, and in all honesty, I kind of wish I kept it. While I was creating the card, I didn't want to cover the stripes, understandably. But now that I'm rewatching it, the black definitely helped that sentiment to pop out more. But I still like how this card turned out. It's actually my favorite of the three. And to help the centers of the poppies pop, oh my gosh, I am adding some white gel pen to the stamens and to the centers. I actually didn't like the centers. I thought it was too distracting. So I'm going to add the Trinity Stamp gold sequins in the center of them. And I like that much more. I'm also going to add a few kind of near that sentiment. And then that will complete my final card. I am going to mat it on white cardstock, and then I cut a black panel that will cover my card base, which is 3 3/4 by 8 3/4. And then I love adding mats. I really feel like that's the perfect finishing touch on a card. And yeah, really love this one. I will have these cards listed on my Etsy as well as my website. I have been trying to catch up on posting my cards in my videos, but every time I post a card, it gets sold out. So if you like these cards, I definitely would pick them up fast. The first card I created is actually going to be going to a friend, but the shaker card and this card I will sell as a pair. So here are all 3 cards I created with the Popping Poppies stamp set. This stamp set is available at the Scrappy Tails store. Let me know what you guys think of these cards. Which one is your favorite? If you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post my next video. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.